Hi, I'm Ron and welcome to PopScicle, where I talk about popular culture, science, and everything in between. In case you're new to this channel, I'm Ron. I'm a biology teacher and researcher, but I'm also a student of popular culture, and that's what my channel is all about, bringing together my interests in science and popular culture to make science more interesting to everyone. And in this episode, I'm going to be talking about or giving a review of Trese, the newest series out on Netflix now. I love horror. Anyone who has been following some of the episodes of my channel would know that it's my favorite genre of literature and movies. And so I was really stoked for this particular series, especially because, of course, I've been familiar with the comic book series since it was first published in the early 2000s, and I have read at least the first two volumes, which are these ones. I actually have all of the volumes, but I haven't read all of them, and I plan to do that. I plan to rectify that very soon, especially because I've just finished watching the entire series of 6 episodes of what is hopefully just the first of several seasons. I think anyone who has finished the series would know that there is a lot of room for a second season. And so I'd like to talk about that. I'd like to talk about the series and how I saw it, what I thought about it. First and foremost, and this is probably the question that a lot of people are asking themselves prior to jumping into watching the series, is what language should I be watching it in? There's, of course, the option of watching it in Filipino, which is what we would assume is the language that everyone is speaking, given that these are Filipino characters and the story is set in the Philippines. Or am I going to listen to it in English, which is how it was produced? It was produced as an English language animation. And if you think about it, the comics are actually in English, not in Filipino. And then, of course, for those who are anime fans, there's the extra option of watching it in Japanese, which, of course, everyone who has watched at least one anime would know how brilliant Japanese voice actors are, or seiyus are, in what they do. Ultimately, what we decided, by we, I mean me and my brother, we watched it together. We decided to watch it first, the first episode in Filipino, because of course we felt like it's truest to the roots of the series. And then after watching it, or the first episode in Filipino, we decided to watch it in English, so just so that we could compare. And then from there, we would decide what language to watch it in for the remaining episodes. So, we checked out the Filipino language version first, and it was good. There are a few things better than hearing Filipino being spoken in a Netflix show, and of course, it very well suited the setting and the characters. Ultimately, we decided that the English version was preferable. I think in large part it was because of Shay Mitchell being able to deliver a very strong vocal performance. Liza Soberano, who is a good actress and is the voice of Alexandra Trese in the Filipino version, does do a good job. But I think in her effort to modulate her voice, make it deeper, make it more powerful than what her voice actually sounds like in real life, there was a bit of maybe an emotional disconnect or a bit of the emotion lost. That doesn't mean she's a bad voice actress, although she's not a professional voice actress. But I just preferred Shay Mitchell's version. Undoubtedly, I will be watching all of the episodes in Filipino down the line, and I'll be doing that also for the Japanese version. So I'll likely be watching the whole series thrice, at least thrice, if I'm not tempted to watch it also in Spanish or German or any of the other available languages. But if you ask me what's essential, don't listen to people who are saying, "Oh, you're Filipino. It's based on a Filipino comic book series, so you should watch it in Filipino." Don't listen to that. Whatever floats your boat, whatever you feel comfortable with, and always remember the comic book itself is in English, not in Filipino. So it's not as if you're doing a disservice to it if you listen to it in English and not in Filipino. Now, having said that, let's go to the series itself. Of course, it's about Alexandra Trese here, who is a paranormal detective in some way. She is part of a family, a lineage of such professionals in the occult who has a suite of abilities and skills and attributes and gimmicks that makes such a well-rounded and amazing character that's steeped into the occult as much as John Constantine is. Uh, when I read the comics and when I watched the series, I couldn't help but imagine a crossover between her and John Constantine. And Budjette, who's one of the creators of the series and the character, has said that John Constantine was an inspiration when he created the character, who was originally male, actually, before he decided, along with Kajo, his co-creator, that the character would be better served as female. And that's why we have Alexandra Trese. No nonsense, kick-ass female character, a woman of the definitely a woman that we should be seeing more of in popular culture nowadays. So I think everyone who enjoys a strong female character would really like the series, and also anyone who likes the occult, as I do. And there was a part of my life, and you would see that. Well, you can't see it right now, but I do have books here behind me that are on witchcraft and the occult. And I had a face. I did have a face where I was fascinated with the occult, and so I loved everything about the series that showed rituals, magical rituals, especially because the magical rituals were delivered in the native tongue, in Filipino, even in the English version. And I would like to believe, although I'm not sure because I haven't seen it, in the Japanese version it would probably be the same. Comment below if you've watched it and tell me if the spells are still in Filipino, even in the Japanese version. I think they would be. It makes sense. And the producers have gone on record to say that they really intended that because they wanted there to be a deeper, older feel to the spells, which would be lost if they were translated in English or Japanese. That lent the series a grounded feeling and a culturally resonant feeling, because even if the language is different, you see these Filipino characters speaking in English, it's not off-putting. Because, well, first and foremost, English is a secondary language and a very, very well-used language in the Philippines. So it's not as if it's very weird to see people speaking English in the series. But then you have you have Filipino being spoken during rituals, and so yeah, there's power to that, which resonates with the cultural milieu of of the series. And we have Alexandra Trese, a kick-ass female character, but we also, of course, have some of the most famous or popular mythological creatures in Philippine folklore. We have the Tikbalang, we have the Aswang, of course, which has gained popularity and notoriety in international media because of several series that have featured it. And even in Dungeons and Dragons, you have some Aswang like the Manananggal featuring there. So it's not as niche or not as unknown in the international community now. You also have the White Lady, which is not actually exclusive to the Philippines. You have a lot of other Asian countries featuring the trope of a female, long-haired female ghost that's still tethered to the real world because of unfinished business, something like that. And you have the Tiyanak, which would fascinate a lot of people. It's a monster in the guise of a baby, essentially. When I saw the Tiyanak here in the series, I couldn't help but say this is not the Tiyanak that I grew up with, because anyone who's from the Philippines and who was born in the 80s or before, or even the early 90s, probably would be familiar with the Tiyanak movie of the Philippines, which features yes, a horrible looking monster in the original guise of a baby, but even when it turns, it's not as fearsome as it was portrayed here in Trese with the extra spider limbs. So that's a nice twist. And you also have the Gigante or the giants and the Diwata who's there's a glow up to this Diwata. It's an anime glow up with that circular glowing field of magic, which the Diwatas in Philippine folklore don't usually have, or at least they're not usually depicted that way. So there are those changes, cosmetic changes that were made, and even when you compare the anime series to the comic books, there were certain deviations. Like those who have read the first two volumes would be familiar with the story that involves, yes, again, the Tiyanak, which is linked to abortion. I understand why they had to change that so that it would cater to international audiences. When, in fact, when I was reading that that story, that case in the comic books, I was wondering to myself, how would this portray the, how would they portray this when in the United States it's such a hot button issue, such a big moral, ethical, social issue, pro-life and all of that. So, in the comic books which is written from a Filipino Catholic perspective, there's a certain depiction of abortion which does not which would not sit well with everyone in the United States or several other Western countries. So I understand why they changed that particular aspect, and it's okay. It's not jarring. Um, it's not off-putting. Minus those cosmetic changes, minus those minor, I would say, minor changes, it really stayed true to the spirit of the comics as far as I've read them. And in fact, we can say that the 6 episodes mostly touched on what I've read, plus a few things that I haven't, which I think was okay. At first, I was thinking maybe I should read everything before I watch the series. It's not a prerequisite. It's not necessary that you've read everything for you to enjoy the series. I found myself really immersed in the world. And part of that was the way they depicted Manila. Manila has never looked so beautiful. I mean, I'm a film buff, as anyone who's been following my channel would know. So I've seen a lot of films that have depicted Manila, that have shown Manila. But I've never seen it in such beautiful artwork as here. That the cityscape, whether it's daytime or nighttime, but especially during nighttime, it's photoreal, and the way it's colored and lit, it's so inviting. It invokes a lot of memories and a lot of feelings, especially because of the lockdown. I haven't been out into Makati, which is shown regularly in the anime, for many months now, and I love going to Makati and several other places in Manila, and it makes me yearn even more to go out there, especially the nightlife of Manila, which I really miss. And it's so beautiful. Um, and really, it makes the city as much of a character as the other characters, as the real characters are. It's a world. It's a breathing world, and I'm really proud of how Manila looks in this series, and I'm glad that international audiences are seeing this sprawling cityscape, and they're probably wondering, oh, this is what Manila looks like. Maybe I should go there. Why not? Um, Speaking of characters, of course, Alexandra Trese is an amazing character. Anyone who loves Buffy the Vampire Slayer or any other strong female character that kicks ass and wields weapons really well and has a steadfast conviction and fights monsters would love this series, because that's what Alexandra Trese is, and she's burdened with so much responsibility coming from a legacy uh, inherited from her family line, and even by prophecy. I will not spoil that part, but there is some sort of a prophecy being played around in the series, and she bears that with dignity and fierceness. But she's never completely just stoic and unfeeling. And the scenes where she would be a bit more lighthearted and casual, especially when she's exchanging pleasantries with the Kambal, the twins. Those are really good moments that show some dimension in her character. Now, speaking of the Kambal, the twins, they're fascinating. If you've been following social media revolving around the series after it aired, then you'd have seen how much buzz there is surrounding the Kambal, the twins, the himbos, as one tweet has said, and she's living for them being depicted as himbos. They're comic relief, but at the same time they're very important in the storyline in terms of showing the strength of family ties and of upbringing. And they're cool characters. I wish there were more of them. I wish there were more scenes depicting how cool, how awesome they are. I guess this tides us over for a second season. The first season, yes, for a first season, it's okay. And they did show the backstory of the twins. So I suppose that was enough. But because they're so cool and they're so funny, I can't help but wish that we had more scenes with the twins. Capitan Guerrero is an awesome character One, because he's such a straight up good guy. Second, because he's a cop. And cops are not given a lot of very good rep nowadays. Not only in the United States, not only in the Philippines, but in a lot of other places. Definitely, the last few years in the Philippines have not been good to the image of policemen, and I like that. I like that this series, probably more than the comics. Again, I'm speaking just from having read the first 2 volumes. It doesn't shy away from showing that darker, more corrupted side of the police force in the Philippines. But here you have Captain Guerrero as the exemplar, the ideal for public public service workers in the Philippines, for the police in the Philippines. Someone that policemen can aspire to. Uh, Aside from the fact that he is not too flustered in the wake of these supernatural threats, he's a good, decent, ethical, moral guy. And how I wish we had more of them, more of people like him in the police force and serving the public in general. Now, of course, this is an anime. This is an animated series, so you'd ask about the animation. The animation is really good. Like I said, the cityscape of Manila is photoreal. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeously painted. Uh, when it's not the cityscape, when it's the characters and the action sequences, it's all good. The character designs are on point. The action sequences are quite good. They're not as fluid as what you may have come to expect from such things as Avatar: The Last Airbender or the Justice League animated series from DC, but it's pretty good. And the thing about Alexandra Trese anyway is she's not meant to move as fluid as the Airbenders, as the Benders, or the Justice League heroes and people like that. Her movements are very efficient, very precise. She doesn't have too many motions. She's brutal in that way, and so she doesn't have to move in an exceptionally fluid manner or have too many moves in one sequence. So it serves its purpose. And um, when fighting aswang, you probably wouldn't uh, worry too much about how you look when you're fighting them, right? This type of world, this type of setting with occult and mythological creatures has always fascinated me. And in fact, I've written some short stories that use the same setting. I hope to get published soon. And I look forward to exploring it more, both in the comics and in a second season. I won't spoil the ending, definitely. Except to say, and I hope this is not too much of a spoiler, that there's a lot to look forward to for a second season. So I'm really hoping that it gains a lot of popularity and a lot of people like it and it becomes critically acclaimed because it deserves it. It's mostly Filipino produced. Like there are a lot of people in the staff, of course, and there are a lot of foreigners or international people, but a lot of them, most of the staff and the crew and the cast are Filipino. And so it's something definitely to be proud of. And come on, whoever expected when they read or heard about this comic book series from 2005, I believe, that it would become a Netflix series, an animated Netflix series. I don't think anyone expected that, much less Budjette and Kajo. And so it's awesome. It's awesome to see it out there, and hopefully it opens the door for other Filipino creations. Like Mythology class would make for an excellent series. It's another one that tackles folklore and myth, and in fact, it would make for a fascinating, amazing crossover with Trese. I do know that there is a Mythology class live action movie that's being planned. I don't know if it's still associated with Gerald Darrow as it was originally announced. I hope that pushes through because it's a great comic book series also. So I'm looking forward to more of this. In the meantime, I'm going to watch the Japanese version, and then I'm probably going to record an episode here that compares the English, the Filipino, and the Japanese versions. I hope you watch it if you haven't seen it, but it's weird that you're listening to this reaction video without having watched it yet. But anyway, what floats your boat, right? If you haven't, I really suggest that you watch it, and I'm pretty sure that you will enjoy it as much as I did. If you like that episode and you would like to see more episodes on popular culture, science, and everything in between, don't forget to subscribe to PopScicle so that you may be alerted to new content in the future. See you again next time.